Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast, our ACC preview. As always, I am BuckMetrics from Newport Beach, California, joined by everybody's favorite Canadian and North America's most accurate political pollster, Robert Martin. And we have our usual ACC expert. We have Josh from CFFGuys. Josh, great to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be on. This is a annual occurrence. I told my son, I said, "Don't wait up for me tonight. I'll be won't be off before you're going to bed, my friend."
Yeah, we tend to go a little long here too. We get a little verbose into the weeds from time to time, so we appreciate it. Let me go here. Okay. Just a reminder, we make all our conference previews available in PDF format. You can leave your email address in YouTube comments for access. I will give it to you if you already have access from last year. I'm dropping them in from this year as well. Or if you don't want to leave your address on public for bots to pick up on YouTube, you can just hit me up at BuckMetrics on Twitter. Today is the ACC preview, and Robert, I think it's time that you and I be square with the dozens and dozens of listeners here. We are often very rough on one specific ACC coach in the state of South Carolina named Dabo, and it's time that we confess to our past. Little known fact is that Robert and I were once assistants at Clemson, and it did not go well. We got yelled at, and we basically had to turn tail. It worked out okay for Dabo. We went on for some national championships after that. Amazingly, Clemson plays at a stadium that looks a lot like where Kennesaw State plays, huh, Robert?
Yeah, it does look very similar. I think in the picture there, Dabo's yelling at us. I think it's because we have two guys blocking each other. Of
Yes.
course, I think that's on us. I think.
Yeah, as coordinators, we did not do well on that. All right, if you're new, this is the BuckMetrics glossary. I refer to these throughout the whole podcast. Take a screenshot of this and save it where you save all your college football stuff. And if you are not new, you are, as you know by now, by definition, brilliant. Guys, let's get to the ACC overview. The very big, bloated, and lovely ACC with, I believe, 17 teams. Let's kind of grid it out, all the teams and their metrics from last year and returning talent. A couple of things that stick out to me, just big picture, is we only have 3 starting quarterbacks that had an apex of over 100 last year. So quarterbacking could be at a premium this year in this conference. The other thing that's interesting to me is, as I grab my laser pointer here, thank you very much, the best defenses here basically retain most of their talent. So I'm not sure about the upward mobility of the defenses here as well. I'm hardly cracking the code of college football here, but if you've got a quarterback in this conference and basically had a decent defense last year, you're in pretty solid shape. So there's my original take that's been probably recited 100,000 times already. Anything just kind of like big picture in the ACC that strikes you, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's a really top-heavy conference, particularly this year. I think there's going to be some teams that we're going to point out that we're like, man, these are really good teams, and then the rest of it's pretty rough as it gets down there. When you bloat the conference like that, you know you're going to have some bottom feeders, particularly that are on the West Coast and have to travel to the Atlantic Coast Conference to play games. So,
yep. Robert, anything strike you on the big picture of the ACC?
Yeah, just looking down, there's clearly a couple of teams that have been completely cleaned out, or at least significantly cleaned out. Stanford's up there, Boston College, Syracuse taking some hits too. So it's interesting how like the top of the conference in Miami, okay, the O-line isn't great, we'll talk about that later, but like the top of the conference is looking pretty good. Not horrible up there. They're very competitive, but the thing is, this is talent retention, right? Now, some of it's graduation. I'm not going to say all of it is just NIL, but it seems like some schools are doing far better at talent retention and acquisition than other schools. That's very clear.
Yeah, fair. I think that's what we're going to see going forward, especially in kind of these, what I want to call them, like transitory, not really transitory, because the second cuts of the Power Four here, I think you're going to see that a lot, like the big divides that you mentioned. So, who's doing NIL right? A team that almost won the national championship last year came within a single Carson Beck interception of making it. Carson Beck has moved on, replaced by Darian Mensah of Duke. Beautiful. Retain over 100% of last year's Ryan by using the portal well. They keep Malachi Toney. They bring in Cooper Barkate from Duke, Vandrevius Jacobs from South Carolina, and Cam Vaughn from West Virginia. Tough break for Rich Rod there. 4 new starters on the O-line. That's probably my biggest concern here, although if that's it, when you have Mario and Mirabal on your staff, I think you're in solid shape there. I like to basically have that as my point of concern. It means everything else is great. Last year, they clearly fixed what had been ailing the program when they made what I said was the most consequential defensive coordinator hire. And I was quite right about that by bringing in Corey Heatherman. And you can see the job that he did, bringing their defensive rating up by 9+ points. That just, they just went up so much in all these categories here. I don't need to read everything here on the bullet points here, but clearly they were awesome last year on all the metrics. And here's the thing that is really scary as I grab my pointer again. They have the fourth highest returning starts in all of FBS, and they have the second highest improvement metric for all the ACC defenses. And if that's not enough, now they end the season with 3 home games, which is very nice. The season win total is 10.5 with the over taking some money. That seems pretty fair to me. If anything, I think it might be a little light. When you both said top heavy, I think that this is the tippy top of the top, and I think there's a pretty big gap from number 2. So I'm not compelled to bet the over using the standard Robert gave me $100. I would definitely take the over if I had to play something here. Josh, this is your territory with Miami. Congratulations. You had a little bit of a condolence on how it ended, but awesome season last year. What do you think about the U?
Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad that Tulane tight end is gone from the roster after he just whiffs on a block for a touchdown on a punt block that cost us a national championship game. Man, look, Miami's playing with house money going to the playoffs, and so it was a fun ride. It's some of the most fun I've had watching college football. Yeah, this is fun. Great team. I think coming back, Mario, we know the one thing he can do is recruit, and it seems like he continues to backfill this roster. My biggest concerns, just like you, it's offensive line. I think Cristobal and Maribal there, I think gives some of those concerns are mitigated by having them as your offensive line coaches. But I think the real concern is, can they replace 2 first round talents at defensive end? Because that's really what made them stand out as the year went on. And I just don't know. Like, I don't know what the impact is going to be, and I think it's probably just their ceiling isn't as high when you have those 2 defensive ends gone. Even though they picked up the defensive end from Missouri coming over, that's a great pickup. But are they going to? We'll see if the young talent, the 5 stars that they have replacing those guys, if they can come in and step up. But those guys were special. They wreaked havoc in backfields and on offensive lines that were incredible. And I just don't know if you can repeat that. Should be enough to win the ACC, maybe for the first time ever for Miami. but
Yeah, Jesus, yeah. What about
but
that?
I don't know about playoffs. I don't know how far they'll get in the playoffs when they get there.
I think it just depends on the draw. It sounds like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Robert, you gonna be the stinker on this one and poop on the parade?
No, the O line is a concern here. I will say that that was the same concern for Texas last year, and we saw how that went. Now, again, this team is still better. This team is better than Texas, in my opinion. Definitely better than Texas last year. The thing is, though, just looking at the numbers and looking at the schedule, you say, oh, okay, maybe they lose to Notre Dame. It's at Notre Dame. Maybe they lose to Notre Dame, and they should win the rest of those games. But the thing is that last year, okay, they almost won a national championship. Then why did they lose to Louisville and SMU? Right?
Yeah.
There's always these games, and we called it last year. I remember the Louisville game specifically. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm betting Louisville here because this screams a Mario Cristobal game here. Here's the thing: I think Miami's a very good team. I think if the ACC fixes their tiebreakers, which I'm sure we're going to talk about the tiebreakers when we get to Duke here in the future, in Virginia, but if they actually fix their tiebreakers, then this Miami team could probably get to the ACC championship game. It's really hard. There is no clear, oh, this team is clearly better to get to the ACC championship game than Miami. They're the clear favorites to win the conference, clear favorites to get to the championship game, and then very clearly after that, clear favorites to win, and then probably a clear favorite to go to the playoff. The thing is, though, is that can we stop those random losses? Because those random losses really hurt this team. That loss to SMU and Louisville, if one of those doesn't happen, they win the conference. They very likely win the conference. They beat, I think it was Virginia. I think Duke was the lower seed, if I remember correctly. They very clearly beat one of those. And then they may have a first round bye potentially. I'm not even sure where they'd be ranked for that. But if that happens, that fixes a lot of the problems that happened in college football last year. Then all of a sudden Notre Dame's in as well. It changes everything. But that's the thing. It's just that team was a really good team last year. It was still a really good team last year. Again, at the end of the day, when we're making our picks for the conference championship, Miami's going to be there. But there's still a little in the back of my head to be like, yeah, okay, we've said this before, but can they do it, right? Again, nothing on the schedule is scary at all. Nothing outside of Notre Dame. None of these are scary. They avoid Louisville and SMU. They're like, okay, yeah. Florida State, not particularly worried about that. Maybe Pitt, maybe Clemson, but this is a very clear 10 or 11 win season, depending on, and if you beat Notre Dame, it's an undefeated season potentially. These should be easy, but we've said that before, and we see where that goes, right? So, yeah, they're probably the favorites to win and the favorites to go to the championship game, but time will tell whether or not that happens or not.
Robert, to your point, they're 2 touchdown favorites in every game except Clemson and Notre Dame. And Clemson, they're 9-point favorites on the road, which is ridiculous going into Clemson, even if Clemson is down, right? The schedules look, if Mario stumbles on this, that's on him. He finally figured out last year you just got to run the ball like 80% of the time and then throw it to Malachi Tony a few times, and then you can win. Just don't take risks.
And you've got, I think it's fair to say that the depth of the wide receiving position is just completely different this year than last year too, right? That I think solves for a lot too. I would almost say, though, to your point, Josh, maybe the scariest thing is that there are not really any scary games. That's what really scares you. It's the Syracuse thing 2 years ago. Where it's like, this isn't going to happen until it does. But Mr. Heatherman narrows those windows where that can happen.
That's right. Yep.
So
and Darren Minta, I think, is a lot better than Carson Beck. I think they've really improved offensively.
Yeah.
And that does make a difference. Again, the offensive line you get concerned about, but Minta's played behind worse offensive lines than this. So that's another thing.
Are they giving up on just like developing their own QBs at this point?
They just brought in a 5-star for 2027. Okay. So they spent a lot of money on that. We'll see. I think they're trying to play the long game here, but they just they haven't invested well in the position before. We'll see. I think Mensa's actually here for 2 more for this year and then the next year. And then I think they hand it off to an in-house talent.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. And we're going in Phil Steele order here. So next on the list is SMU, an elite Apex Plus in 2024. Interestingly, Kevin Jennings took a step back last year. His Apex really dropped from 132 to 110. They get a transfer from East Carolina with a nice Ryan, but like somebody from maybe a bigger program, if you're trying to be a contender here for the ACC title. The new O-line starters played in 10 and 12 games for SMU last year. No starts. Sounds okay, maybe logicals. It doesn't seem like a lot of transition on the O-line. It just almost seems like next guy up. I'm concerned about the defense here in terms of just lower returning talent metrics. The defense was good, not dominant. You couple that with the Rhett Lashley offense, and you're probably in good enough shape here. What's crazy is you've got basically between September 19th and October 31st, you have no road games. What a break that is. My gosh. The season win total is 8.5. The over's minus 140. This seems reasonable to me. Here's where I'll throw it to you, Josh. This is an underwhelming resume for the ACC second best team, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think SMU continues to outperform like their talent metrics and everything around them. Rhett Lashley's doing a great coaching job. I am concerned a little bit about they lost, I think their defensive coordinator, was it to Dallas maybe? To the Cowboys? Like he's gone. And so I'm like, I feel like that guy was really good. And what's the impact of losing a really good coordinator when coaching is what you're hanging your hat on at this point? I think their talent rating, I was looking at that earlier today, and I feel like they're in the 50s or 60s, which is pretty average for the ACC. But their coaching talent is really good. And if you lose one of those coaches that's really good, how much does that impact you? How do you backfill that? I'm worried about that. I think offensively they'll be fine. Lashley's there. I think Kevin Jennings will bounce back. They got Jalen Hale from Alabama. He's a former 5-star that looks like he tore his ACL when he was a true freshman. Looks like he's fully recovered now. I think he's going to be a starting outside wide receiver in front of that East Carolina wide receiver you mentioned, Yannick Smith. And then Jalen Cooper on the other side and Ymir Knight, who showed really good chemistry to end the year there with Kevin Jennings. They brought in Kendrick Raphael from Cal, who wasn't crazy, but he's consistent and should be a good running back for them. So I like what they've done offensively. It's just defensively, I think there's a bunch of questions, and I'm not really. And again, like this is your second best team, but you're going to see the other good teams here. Like I think what sets them apart, the other good teams have question marks at the quarterback position, where I think Kevin Jennings is as solid as you can get returning to your starter. So we'll see. Definitely some question marks here.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, it feels like it's whoever can like kind of fill the gaps of the unknown first might be the team to challenge to face Miami. Does it feel like that?
Yeah, this is the thing, and SMU clearly deserves to be up there in the consideration for second best team in the conference. But at the same point in time, yeah, Kevin Jennings did take a bit of a step back last year. That loss to Baylor is, looking back at the entire season now, that loss to Baylor in week 1 is a real question mark. It's a real what happened here, right? I honestly don't know how that, looking back at the season, that loss makes absolutely no sense now. Like, how did they lose to a Baylor team that was not good at all, right? The thing is, there was a lot of losses that they had last year. That was the loss they beat Miami, but they also lost to Wake Forest and Cal and as well. So there is a lot of weird stuff. That's not an 8-4 regular season, right? And they could have potentially won the ACC. Like, I don't understand how you could beat a team that almost went to the national championship and then lose to 2 of your Texas rival teams, and then also Cal, one of the worst teams, and then Wake Forest, a team on the uptrend of like upward trajectory, of course. But that's a team you shouldn't have lost to, right? This is like the same, and this is probably why that's at 8.5. It's like they can be good, they can be a good team, but like what happens when you have some of these tougher teams on the schedule? Now they have Notre Dame. I guess Notre Dame's scheduling the entire ACC now, but you have Louisville, which is a pretty good team. You have like Forest, which be good. Like there's a couple of potential losses on here. I think it's definitely not as scary as last year's. I don't think you're going to see 8-4. I think probably 9-3 is more likely. But any one of those weeks, something could happen where like they seem to just have a problem, and that Baylor game shouldn't have happened. Baylor was not a particularly good team last year. They shouldn't have lost that game. You can say the same about a couple other games, but it's a good team. And I'd love for them to succeed. And I think last year's doing a good job. And if you can look up there at the top at our Saban, which is our new coaching metric, look at that 135, 128, 130. He's been an amazing coach even before 103. 103. He was 125 as an offensive coordinator in 2021. Then like 103, 135, 128, 130 as a head coach here at SMU. They've been an amazing job, and obviously they made the College Football Playoff in 2024. But it's just those random losses that are close losses. I don't like. They're better than last year, but they got to figure out why those keep happening, and especially against teams that they should be beating easily, right? So yeah, it's a bit of a question for me on this. They're probably the second best team, but I just don't think you're getting the same value for that as you probably should be.
Yeah, and I don't think they're the second best team, but if we're just going by the Phil ordering here to the next team, I'm really sure this is not the second best team, the Clemson Tigers. Robert and I have made a sport of it of just pointing out, like, guys, they're not that good. They're not that good. They're not that good. Again, their power rating, they were 4th in 2024, and the 7th in the conference last year, not nationally, in the conference. They did have the top Ryan in the ACC last year. Coming into last year, and they just didn't perform. They had a very high improvement metric on the offensive line and defense last year, and the offense regressed, and the defense basically flatlined. And here we're at that stage of the Dabo thing where it's, okay, I'm going to pretend that the problem was the offensive coordinator. So maybe I can get this guy from 10 years ago to run the stupid offense that I call the Clemson offense. It just doesn't work. And it's not going to work. This new quarterback didn't really dazzle me, to be nicely. He did have a good game, weirdly, against SMU, the Apex against SMU. And then he had a 12 against Furman. Not easily done. So 60 overall, I think, is a fair representation when you take the average of the good and the bad. I'm thinking Dabo's kind of been caught criticized for just not bringing fresh blood in, and then he did with Tom Allen, and Tom Allen didn't really turn the defense around. So I'm wondering if that really, you see that didn't work, and then he goes back to old Chad Morris, the guy from way long ago, and I'm wondering if the new blood hires are done. The season win total, 7.5. That doesn't speak of second best to me in the conference. I think the 7.5 is fair. I just look at this. I don't know what their identity is. I don't know what they're supposed to do good. I don't know what even they actually do well above average. They seem to me an average ACC team, maybe upper middle class. Is that fair, Josh?
Yeah, totally. I think Dabo's completely lost his way. The transfer portal, the new era of NIL, I think completely passed him by, right? And has exposed him a little bit. Now, like you said, like Chad Morris talked him into hiring him. Dabo hit him up,
Really?
was like, yes, Dabo hit him up, was like, hey, do you have any recommendations for
Oh boy.
offensive coordinators I should go after? And Chad Morris is, what about me? I want to get back in the game. And Dabo's, good idea. Our wives are good friends. I'm like, these are not good reasons to like,
Yeah.
don't hire your friends at this point. I think Dabo just lost his way, and you're hitching your wagon to Christopher Vizina instead of going to the portal and getting a upgrade at QB. This all is like very bad signs. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was 2016 maybe that Clemson just obliterated Miami at home. I think it was like 48 to like nothing maybe, but it was like Al Golden's basically last game. Got him fired. And I just wonder, does Mario Cristobal not try to go run up the score on Clemson? It's an October game. Seat could be pretty hot for Dabo at that point. And if they don't just repay them that favor, if they do, that clearly shows that Clemson's just done, or Dabo's done as the head guy there, and they're going to have to move on. But this is, man, they are right on the edge of mediocrity and, quite frankly, just not mattering anymore in college football until they make a change.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what that, just not repeat myself, but just I don't know what they're supposed to be doing well.
Yep.
I came up with, when we had our head coaches preview episode, I came up with a theory, and I want to run it by you. You probably remember when Clemson played Ohio State in the playoffs.
Yep.
And it came out later that
Day.
Ohio State, Ryan Day, thank you. I want to say Beard. No, that's not him. That's the other guy. Ryan Day basically he was a little bit brazen about it. He said, yeah, they steal signals. So we went no huddle, so they couldn't steal signals. And literally from that day forward, boom, that has not been the same team. So apologies if it offends anybody, but Bible thumping Dabo, I don't know, it's interesting. He can't cheat, and all of a sudden, look at that. Does that seem plausible? Like that was the beginning of the end, that right there?
Yep. That totally makes sense, right? That I remember that game. That was one of those weird games too. Like you're learning exactly when they went on no huddle. Like all of a sudden, Justin Fields is unbelievable. Can't be stopped. Yeah, like that was the beginning of the end. Look, the guy's career has basically been like you have an unbelievable quarterback, and Clemson's good. You don't have a Superman quarterback, and they look pretty human.
Yep. This guy's not superhuman. I'm pretty comfortable saying that.
No.
Robert, I don't see enough landmines on the schedule to bet the under as much as I really wanted to make a case. But if you're the same mind as me, I'm very excited about that week 1 game at LSU. I think these are two different programs. I've got questions about LSU, but are we looking at that game closely?
So yeah, I've actually already bet that game. So a couple of things in here I just kind of want to point out. We'll get to the LSU game here in a second. Just if you go up there with the Saban metric, right? So the game you guys are talking about, I believe that was the 2020 season. That was the 2020 season. I believe that was with Trevor Lawrence. That was Trevor Lawrence's last year. He went to the 2020 NFL draft. So that 2020 isn't on there, but I think his coaching Saban was a lot higher before then. So then it dropped down to 121, then 126 in 2022, and then it's basically 115, 117, 114. So he's basically slowly trending down to an average coach. Average is 100. So this is a slow drop that you're seeing, and that's exactly what we're seeing on the field. Now, the thing is, that is buoyed by the fact that they went out last year. They crushed Furman 45-10. It doesn't detect the apex of it, but that's basically just free Saban rating for that. They had a couple other blowouts of the season as well. They crushed North Carolina 38-10, Boston College 41-10. That's probably worth 20 points of Saban right there. So he's basically pushed him over the top of over 100 alone. Two things that I want to say too. One, obviously they lost last year in the Pinstripe Bowl. That was against Penn State. They actually lost that pretty badly, 22-10. That was people last year, and it's still crazy to remember, that was people's championship game last year. That was a lot of people's projection for the national championship game was Penn State Clemson. And then they played in the Pinstripe Bowl, and Penn State, with not even their head coach, with a new interim head coach, crushed them 22-10, of which Penn State actually had to overperform massively in the last couple of weeks of the season just to get to a bowl. They had to win out to get to a bowl, and then they still crushed them. So, Cade Klubnik, he is an NFL quarterback. I think he was drafted in the 3rd round by, I want to say, Dallas. I could be wrong on that, though, but he was drafted pretty lowly. He was not a first-round pick again. He was one of the top candidates to be the first overall pick going into last season. That didn't even come close. But the thing is that last year they talked about how good this Clemson team was going to be because it returned the most amount of returning talent. They had Cade Klubnik, who was a Heisman finalist, a projected first-round NFL pick, and look at how all that turned out. And now we've got a quarterback who's a massive question mark, a pretty beat-up O-line. I'm looking at 44% of returning pass blocking stats, 56% of run blocking snaps returning, and definitely some losses on rushing and receiving. This team is just materially worse than last year. And the 7.5, I'm fairly sure last year it was like 9.5, if I'm mistaken, that their win total over was. I think we cashed it with the Syracuse game, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 9. Yeah, it was 9, I think. Because I remember I'm like, oh, cool, Syracuse won. Okay, I've cashed this now. I'm fairly sure midway through the Troy game, I realized I was going to cash the Clemson win total under, but this is the thing. Last year, LSU Clemson, and you remember last year I called that game out early in the season. I said, people think this is going to be a game for a national championship game. I think this is two mid-teams that neither of them are particularly good, and that was exactly what happened. And that spread last year, I believe it was Clemson minus 3.5. I definitely remember betting LSU at plus money, and I definitely remember getting at least one score. LSU won that game. This year, the spread is LSU minus 11.5. That alone, that's not just alone, and I believe that's a neutral site too, if I'm not mistaken too. I think it's a neutral site. I'm not sure. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but I think it's a neutral site. That stat alone is nuts. That tells you the entirety of the trajectory of those two programs. The fact that the win total is 7.5, and they are now 11.5 point underdogs to an LSU team. The books are out on this team. They don't believe in this team. If you want to go after Dabo, if you want to go bet on Dabo and think he's got something left in the tank, go ahead. But it's very clear, again, if you want to believe the signal calling conspiracy, which to be fair could 100% be true. But if you want to believe that, or just believe that the new era has just left him on the wayside, or even my kind of pet theory is the fact that Clemson just doesn't have the money to compete with other programs. South Carolina, not the highest in GDP, definitely not even in the South highest in GDP. But you're now competing with Miami, you're competing with Florida State, and you're competing with the entirety of the Big Ten and the SEC, which is right on top of you. That's pretty challenging too, right? So honestly, I think Dabo is probably at least part of the problem. A lack of resources, another part of the problem. They probably won't even fire Dabo because there's so much in debt. They could have a losing season and still be like, we're going to give Dabo one more chance because they have to get out of the contract, right? This is the thing where normally I think Dabo would probably be on the chopping block, but Clemson has so little money and so little funds and resources here that they just kind of have to keep him. That LSU game is not going to be great. As you already mentioned, they're 9.5 point underdogs against Miami at home. You've got Syracuse, which is a revenge game. You've got the schedule seems kind of easy, but there's a couple of teams that just kind of stand out. Be like, yeah, that team's probably better than this team. That team's better too. So they're definitely not the third best team in the conference. They're just an average ACC team, which when you look at the grand scheme of college football is not particularly great anymore. It's not particularly great. And one more last little point I want to say about this, because Dabo's been saying the whole like, oh, we've won the conference. So yeah, the ACC has been like historically terrible for 6 years now, and it's only now become good by Miami rising up. So basically, beating up on a bunch of teams that were just generically bad does not mean that you're like an amazing head coach. Basically, they dominated this conference because half the ACC is horrible in any given year. So winning the ACC just because you were the best coach and everybody else was horrible is not that big of an accomplishment. So
I forgot that Syracuse game was at home last year. I remember it being outside, and I forgot that Syracuse plays inside. God, they laid an egg at home on that, and that wasn't
yeah,
even competitive, right?
it was. I have the scores on here. It was 34-21 for Syracuse.
Yeah, and I think that
Wow.
was some late window covering on that, or window dressing. Okay, all right. So nobody's buying on Clemson, clearly. I think I might be sold on this team though, as maybe the second best here. A little down year for the offense here for Jeff Braun in Louisville. The offensive rating took a step down, as did the Apex. I'm convinced that Miller Moss has 1.5 moves, and if he was the NBA player, he would have a good first 10 games, and then he'd be out of the league by the All Star break. I think
I
once you
love
kind of
that
know what he's going to do,
analogy.
you can defend him. So maybe you've got a better piece here in Lincoln Kienholz, who was, I think, highly recruited at Ohio State. Just seems like somebody that would maybe fit well with Brome. In the portal, they pick up some Ryan with Trey Richardson from Vandy, 4039 Ryan. Boy, this guy at Tulsa had a pretty hefty Ryan for a tight end, Brody Foley, and then LaWayne
Mhm.
McCoy from Florida State. Again, they seem to rely a lot on the portal for their O-line guys. At least I'm comfortable with this resume. You had a guy with 13 starts at Georgia Southern, 10 starts at BC, 17 starts at South Carolina, and then 12 starts at Delaware in all conference. So I don't see too many stretches there. Here's my gratuitous Clay Helton stab. Maybe this guy from Georgia Southern will excel with real coaching. New DC or new co-DCs, internal promotion. So we'll see about that. They avoid Miami. They host SM. The season win total is only 7.5, although the over is understandably taking a lot of money. I think they're undervalued. They're 6.5 point dogs to Ole Miss. I think that is. I can't see any game where they're getting less points than that. I'm just way different from the market in this in terms of that 7.5 number. The overtaking a lot of money makes sense to me, but I'm just going to different. I would have set the number to different, maybe 8.5. So, am I too bullish on Louisville here, Josh?
I think it just depends on whether Lincoln Kienholz can be the guy. From what I got a buddy that goes to some practices there at Louisville, and he's concerned. He doesn't think that Lincoln Kienholz
Really?
can throw a forward pass. If he's the guy, then it doesn't matter because we're all trying to figure out in the CFF world who's going to be the wide receiver one there at Louisville because that's always a position that is relevant in college fantasy football. And it doesn't matter if Kienholz is the guy.
Really?
So that's a bit concerning. If Kienholz or they don't have a backup that can throw the ball, then I think they could be in trouble. On the flip side, Kienholz is a pretty talented dual threat guy. And they got Isaac Brown, who could be a first round pick. Texas tried to get him out of the portal. Swung and missed there. Keywan Brown, who averaged 7 yards a carry or something crazy last year. And they have Marquise Davis, who's a really highly recruited kid out of Missouri that transferred over there. The last back that transferred out of Missouri that was highly recruited was a kid named Keywan Lacey. And we know what he did. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very high on Marquise Davis. So I think they could, if he had to, and we've seen Brom do this, he can fit his scheme around his personnel. If their quarterback isn't great, then they could pound the rock and then throw it over the top to Trey Richardson, who is a blazer out of Vanderbilt, and it will be the wide receiver one there. So I think there's ways that they can scheme around it, but I am concerned about the QB position.
Wasn't he highly recruited?
Yeah, but he didn't do well when he went into games and stuff like that. He hasn't
Wasn't
crushed
that
it.
Devin Brown? Was he the same class as Devin Brown?
Yes.
What
Him and
happened
Devin
there?
Brown.
Wasn't Brown? I remember
Both
looked really bad.
Yeah, I think they missed on both those
Okay.
guys. Keenholz was out of, I think, South Dakota. And I just think
Uh,
when they crushed it probably against some South Dakota competition, but man, that's a
yeah.
big difference again the Big Ten.
He's
Um,
running away from guys like Robert and I chasing him in the pocket, so it's a little different.
yeah. So we'll see. But Keenholz, I think so far has not impressed the Louisville fan base. But we'll see.
Okay. Wow. Sobering. Robert, do you think that from a line perspective, the Ole Miss is going to be their toughest spot then?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I did. Looking ahead and doing stuff. I actually bet Louisville versus Ole Miss. I took the 6.5 and the money line there. I think the thing is that might be a bit crazy, but honestly, I think people are overvaluing Pete Golding there, and I think we'll obviously talk more about the SEC later. But I think people are like, oh wow, Pete Golding came in and then he beat Tulane and then he beat Georgia. And the thing is okay, but like Georgia was not that great last year. So I think people are massively overvaluing that accomplishment. Um, so I'm yeah. The thing is, other than the Keinholz thing, which is concerning, this team looks pretty solid. Yeah, you've got transfers, so
Yeah.
my returning production chart shows pretty high on O line, even though technically those weren't starters returning in the program. Defense is a bit rough, but not horrible. But offense looks great, right? You're actually returning more receiving yards than you actually had last year. So if Jeff Brom here can get the offense going, and Brian Brom can as well, as the offensive coordinator, if they can get this kid to throw, the offense can mostly take care of itself. The defense obviously going to be a challenge, but we'll see. The thing is, looking at the rest of the schedule, okay, yeah, you got Ole Miss, but Ole Miss may be a bit down. Other than that, what's the next terrifying team? You got SMU, and it's early in the
SMU.
season. But
Yeah.
other than that, there's no Miami. There's not even Clemson. You have Florida State, but that's not particularly scary. You've got North Carolina, Kentucky.
Mm.
You crushed Kentucky 41 nothing last year, actually. But yet somehow this team also lost to Cal last year, too. So I'm not even sure what Cal just had the weirdest season last year. I don't even know what happened with that. But no, the schedule is not particularly scary at all. If they can figure out the offense and do something against Ole Miss, then this team could be pretty scary actually. So I think this team has a good shot to be the second best team in the conference if they can figure it out with Keinholz.
Yeah, I like how your graphics here of of the offensive line compared to mine, because they really they metrically or numerically just tell the story about why I'm not concerned, because these are solid resumes all around here about who they're bringing in. So yeah, I like that. So yeah, Josh has scared me a little bit though. I need to probably just think about this one a little bit on my next dog walk about how much I want to back Louisville here.
It is interesting. It does feel like too they have their toughest games at the beginning of the year,
Yeah,
and a lot of those are home games, right? You do have Ole Miss on the road, but then you get SMU and Wake Forest, which I think Wake Forest is at least a little underrated. I think they've done some good stuff in the portal offensively. It's an up and coming team, but then you get NC State. I think those first 5 games are potentially, other than Pitt, their most difficult on their schedule, really. So
and the specter of whatever Kentucky might be in year one under Will Stein, which is just
yeah,
it could be anything,
yeah,
literally anything, right?
yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, you
So
make
I
a
don't
good
know. It's
point.
interesting. It's like they get out of those games and they're 4-1, or they don't lose an ACC game. Like they are riding pretty, right?
Yeah.
Going down the stretch, facing Pittsburgh at home in Week 12. So
How about this to the top of what we went over at the beginning of the whole ACC thing? Maybe in this league you don't need a quarterback since there's such a paucity of quarterback talent. Maybe you can just
mhm.
work around it, like you said, right? Maybe you can just do that, fake it.
If you look at their just like last year, right? They Miller Moss wasn't like great. Their passing success rate was number
Yeah,
74. Their passing explosiveness was 131, but the run success rate was number 8. Run explosive number 28. If you just repeat that, and then you have Clev Lubin at defensive end, he's unbelievable. You see a little bit of the recipe for where they can have success this year. It's not There's a lot of repeatable things for them from last year, which they went. What was their record last year? 8-4, right? Last
I
year?
think they were 9
No,
games
nine and
last.
four. Yeah, nine and
Yeah,
four. So they could repeat that and do better in the ACC. I definitely think that if I knew that Keinholz was like everything he was
functional.
recruited and what we thought he was going to be, then easily my number 2 team in this conference for sure.
Okay, cool. Anything more in Louisville, Robert?
No, I think we've pretty much said that. Interesting team.
Yeah, perennially an interesting team with an interesting coach, the Pitt Panthers. Cade Bell paying off, improving the offensive rating from negative 4.5 to negative 0.8. I think I'm a fan of what's going to happen with Mason Heinchel here. started as a true freshman from Game 7 going forward. The running game stunk last year, so maybe we look at that as a little bit of positive. This guy didn't have a running game to help him out. Typically, Pitt can, I don't know, they should be better in the running game just by just typical regression. The defense is the second best in the ACC, second in run defense by BuckMetrics for the second straight year. I think they have enough returning talent. It's not overwhelming, but there's enough by BuckMetrics. 7.5, the over's taking some money. I can't imagine in my lifetime I will ever bet an Narduzzi team to go over. So I'm just going to say it's a fair value and move on. But some stuff to like here with the quarterback in year 200, Cade Bell's how I see the story here. Josh?
Yeah, I agree. I think it all depends offensively. It could depend on what do they have in the passing game at the wide receiver position. Because I think I got some guys returning up. Taurus Hicks, who had some big games. Sincere Lee, a little slack guy. Malik Knight's coming over from Western Carolina, where Cade Bell came from a couple years ago. They got some potentially shifty guys or guys that could be explosive in the passing game. And then you have Ja'Carrion Turner, who you talked about. I mean, they struggled in the running game, but he was the one bright spot near the end of the year. I think he had 200 yards rushing. And one of their games, I can't remember – was it man, they surprised some team at the end of the year last year. I can't remember which one. And he had like 200 yards rushing in that game. So I think that could be a huge value, right? And that their offensive line has pretty good returning production. I think they were number 10 in offensive line snaps that are returning, 4,600. I think there's a lot to like here. I think, and with Narduzzi, I think you do have a chance at a defense that could be pretty good. So, I think they're doing really well with the resources they have, and it could be a solid team.
Yeah. Robert, any strong feelings on Pitt other than their coach is always colorful?
This is the thing. There's always weird things that just happen with this team, right? I think this team was basically going to be going to there's so many things. I think if they had beaten Miami, they would have gone. They had to beat Miami in the last week to go to the ACC championship. They couldn't do that, so they had 3 losses. He basically just gave up the Notre Dame game. He's just, we need to win this game. That doesn't matter. So they just gave it up and then got blown out 37-15. So many weird things, so many questionable decisions. It's a good team. It's a solid team. It's a decidedly average team. But then also at the same time, this team goes to a bowl game and they lose to East Carolina, like 23-17. So it's weird. This team is just so weird. Yeah, they're on paper, they're good, they're solid, but they're not. The coach just, I kind of think, just somewhat holds them back. They never been able to break out to that elite level. And I think that's the issue with Pittsburgh here. They're good, but we've just never seen Narduzzi be able to just break out into that elite level. And I think that's what always holds them back. If Narduzzi was if we're looking at if he was elite level coach, I think you'd be talking about Pitt and Miami as being the 2 frontrunners for the conference, because on paper they could be roughly around there, but they're just not. And they're probably a couple players away, but it's just the coaching there's always super questionable decisions. Stuff just happens with this team, and it's not. I don't know. It's weird. Their O-line looks pretty solid. Their defense takes some hits. Their receiving takes some hits as well. But O-line and rushing is solid. I don't know. 7.5 seems right. Do they get to 8 wins? Just looking down the schedule here, you're looking pretty easy there. You have Miami and Louisville. Other than that, everything else seems pretty easy, but they'll lose to something. They'll lose to Florida State or Cal or something. Yeah, that's the thing. Something weird will happen, and then it'll be like, oh, okay, we went 8-4 again, yay! But then they'll do that, but then they'll beat Miami somehow, right? That's the thing. They'll be 8-4 with a win against Miami, right? That's the crazy part of this. That's what they'll do.
Yeah,
it does feel like that Virginia Tech game is a big game in deciding their season. I could see them being 4-0 coming into that game, and if they beat Virginia Tech, you got Miami, but that Louisville game could be one to decide who goes to the ACC championship game, depending on what they do.
It definitely could. Yeah. Not something I imagined when I was putting this deck together. I can just say that. Pardon my dog. My wife just got home. So
no worries.
A little excited to see mommy come home, as am I. All right. I don't know what to make of this team right here, Virginia. We'll start with they had regression level luck last year. If I can go to my laser pointer here. always be alarmed when you see the red luck with the green wins above average. It means basically somebody was pretty much in the spotlight, and a lot of it was fraudulent. They weren't bad, but they were just fortunate. And I think you look at them, and I don't think people appreciate how good their defense was last year. You look and see Tony Elliott team, and then they came through weirdly in clutch spots on offense, but the offense wasn't good, which really just speaks to the whole luck thing that I see. Overall, I had them rated 5th in the power rating. When you take the luck out of the wins above average, you make it luck adjusted. They're 5th in the conference, which feels right to me. Bo Pribula and his 71 Apex come over from Missouri. Congratulations on that. At least on the offensive line, all 5 starters in the program last year, so not like a huge transition that I see there. My guy, John Radzitsky, did a great job up and down on the defense here at Virginia. It seems year to year. They do have a low improvement metric, so to be determined on that. It's good to see Tony Elliott finally, even though I'm not as bullish on them. At least he got a good season out of them and somewhat has it turned around. Season win total 7.5. You're getting to the bloated middle class here with a lot of uninteresting stories. If you guys want to take hours to talk about Virginia, great. I'm not going to take a bunch of time, but this part is so hard of the conference is so hard to play on the totals just because there's so many coin flips because it's just a track of cookie cutter houses that are all the same. So I want to say they're overvalued just because of the luck aspect. I don't know if it's bettable enough. I'll put it this way. What maybe entices me is the fact that the over's taking so much money. If I get plus money under 7.5, that just feels right to me. So are you just looking for regression from Virginia this year too, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. How'd they go 11-3? It's just absolutely crazy to me. They're not a very good team, in my opinion. I guess if their defense is like all world this year and they have a repeat performance from last year, but offensively, man, Bo Pribula is not an upgrade over what they had. Jamari Taylor's gone, who was their offense last year. They replaced him with Peyton Lewis, who's not a great running back. Jaquel Middlebrook from Middle Tennessee. I don't see him repeating what Jamari Taylor did. So I just don't know where they go offensively. And so it's got to limit your ceiling. I haven't looked at their schedule too much. So unless their schedule is just incredible, this is not a team that I certainly would not be betting the over on them.
They do miss Louisville and Miami in their favor. That's just, there's a bunch of just a buffet of middle class here. I can't look at the name of the offensive coordinator, Desmond Kitchens, and not have flashbacks to Freddie Kitchens either. So I know that's not fair. So yeah, that schedule's maybe like my only concern too about maybe they could just ass backward fall into more wins again this year. But I think I'm going to go small play on the under. Are you with me on that one, Robert?
Yeah, a 7-5 season 100% makes sense. You do have SMU, you have Wake Forest here. You've got some other decent teams on the schedule as well, Virginia Tech, and then you just pencil in just another couple of random losses or something. I think this team overperformed a little bit last year. A lot of close games that they just won. Florida State, one of those as well. What was the score there? 46-38. That was in overtime too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They beat North Carolina by a point, beat Washington State by 2. They crushed Virginia Tech. Yeah, they crushed Virginia Tech. That won't be as easy this year. So, like, this is the thing, right? That's a lot. Like, that again ties right into your luck score, right? Beating a not great Washington State team by 2, that's not particularly repeatable. Same as, again, they lost to Duke. Now, that one, you could call that one whatever you want. I think Duke was a better team, and they did win that one. So, no, 100%. I like a 7-5. I don't necessarily hate the under. I feel like it's going to be a bit of a sweat to get to that under, but it's probably going to take to the last week. The last week, they're probably going to be like 6-4, or not be 6-4, 6 and oh no, at that point they'd be 6-5. Yeah, 6-5, or maybe they're like maybe they're 7-4 going into last week, and that's the thing, right? It's like they're 7-4, and you're like, I need Virginia Tech to win to cash this over, right? It's possible, right? I don't know, but I think it's not a bad bet. I think the under is especially if you're getting like -155. The other side is probably like what, +120, +130. I think. Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate under 7.5 +120. That seems nice.
I'm thinking of putting just like almost like a portfolio of these ones where I think the numbers good, but just the juice is just so askew that just get a bunch of those and just see if I can get 10% on that little bucket. And I think that's where this one lands. Okay, elsewhere in the state of Virginia, James Franklin lands on his feet in Virginia Tech. At Virginia Tech. A little bit unlucky team here. I actually weirdly had them fifth in my power ratings in the ACC. Look at Robert Singh here. Robert's metrics not as bullish on Virginia Tech last year with the 69 to Saban, so a little divergence there. Let me just ask you a question real quick on this because, Josh, you know this kind of stuff better than I do. Ty Howey was the tight end coach at Penn State. Any idea about what's going on here with him?
No idea, honestly,
Okay.
with him. I'm assuming they're going to run the ball a lot, do what Penn State does, but I have no idea what this guy's bringing over.
Okay. I like the quarterback from Penn State, Grunkemeyer. He actually was solid as a freshman, 100 apex in, dare I say, the best, I will dare say, the best pass defensive conference in the country. This team was second in the conference in my metrics for run offense. They had the, not surprising, the worst receiving metric last year. They pick up this guy, Kayshawn Brown from Duke, which nice. Good retention here. This speaks well to James Franklin in terms of changing coach, but he kept the offensive line intact largely. Really understated story here is the defense, actually. Brett Pry actually, when people weren't looking, made this an actually good defense. And I think because they just screwed up everything else in the whole program, it just goes underappreciated. Season win total 6.5. The overtaking a lot of money. I'm fine with that juice. I think I can easily put this team ahead of Virginia. I like the quarterback here. I like the defense. That dynamic with the defensive coordinators, a bit weird, but I get it. After I saw these metrics, it's okay. This isn't, I put it this way. I like this a lot more than going to Chad Morris as your offensive coordinator in Clemson. How about that to start with?
That's awesome.
So what else you got in Virginia Tech here?
Yeah, I think they could be really good. I think they're set up well to do what Franklin wants to do on offense, which is run the ball. They got Marcellus Hawkins, who's returning, Jeff Overton, who's returning, and Bill Davis, that's coming from Louisiana. And Marcellus Hawkins had some of the best like yards after contact per attempt by advanced metrics when you look at what makes a running back successful. So I could definitely see them being really good. You talked about Grunkemeyer, like coming over there. He's solid. Luke Reynolds, the tight end, comes over from Penn State. So you see where they could be better offensively. And if they just come back defensively and they're able to be solid there. Look, Virginia Tech, if they're not back this year, they will be back very soon. They're investing a ton of money into this program. I think we know what Franklin can do on the recruiting trail. I think they're absolutely going to be awesome. And look, they could be good this year. I don't think, like you said, like their schedule is not crazy. Like I do like that 6.5 number. They could get it pretty early in the season. I mean, VMI,
Yeah.
ODU, Maryland, Boston College, Pitt's a
It's not a stretch
50-50
to finish at
game.
4-0, right?
Yeah. So then all you need is 3 down the stretch, which their schedule does get more difficult. But Clemson, week 8, none of these games are, other than Miami, are like crazy. You get Miami at home in November, you never know what could happen. So I think 6.5 is a really good number. Obviously, it's, I don't know. You're not going to win a ton by going over with that. So people, they want you to go over, but 6.5 is a number that I definitely like that more than even UVA under.
Okay. Robert, does this team start 4-0?
Maybe if this is the final year for what's his face at Maryland, Mike Loxley at Maryland, right? And that's a possibility. Maryland could be spontaneously combusting here. Old Dominion is actually pretty good, but I don't know if they could stand up to Virginia Tech. The rest of the schedule, okay, yeah, you do have Clemson, SMU, and Miami, but this team could, in my opinion, and this is what Penn State was under James Franklin before, you're just wrecking people's seasons. This could be like, okay, we're just going to end Clemson's season. This is going to be Clemson's 3rd loss, and then that's it. And yeah, SMU has 1 loss. We're just going to end their season too. And we have 3 losses, but we're just going to start ending people's seasons. And I think that's the thing about James Franklin is that, and you could look at it through the apex there, right? Like 130, like 114 in 2021, not great. But then 137, 144, 137. Sorry, the Saban. Sorry, 137, 144, 137, down to 118. Quick note on that is that technically it doesn't have temporary interim coaches in there. So if you got fired from your job, you get credited and dinged for what the interim does. I think that's more than fair. So he may actually gotten a little higher from the intern there. But Ethan Garlick-Meyer, that was actually the guy. That was the quarterback who took over once he left the program. Once James Franklin was fired, and honestly, that was not bad. That could have been a lot worse for Penn State. They got to a bowl, and that was actually they salvaged the season based off of that. Um, I do think he's somewhat limited, though. I feel like he's more like and this is an old throwback name, a Sean Clifford type of quarterback for Ethan Grunkemeyer, and that's that. The second I said it, you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And here's the thing: is that's fine. You don't win a national championship with a Sean Clifford or Ethan Grunkemeyer, but you can win a lot of games. You can win 8, 9, 10 games, and you can you can end someone's season with that quarterback, right? And I think that's ultimately what this comes down to: is that yeah, you could end some of these people's seasons, but that's not a quarterback you win a national championship with. The thing about James Franklin is that there's a lot of people who are like, oh, he's a really good coach. It's a great hire for Virginia Tech. The thing is that he took Penn State. It took him a long time there. He had to get a lot of resources. And the question is, it's just that even with all those resources, he had a good team. They obviously made the college football playoff. They were always 2 losses. They were a very good team, but they could just never get over that hump of being a great team, an elite team. And they looked bad against every other team, but the second they played an elite team, they just couldn't do it. And the thing is, the one good thing is that there are not a lot of elite teams in the ACC, so that should be perfect, right? Maybe 1 or 2, so you're even better than. If you miss one of them, then you're only having 1 loss a year. But the problem is that at Penn State, you have infinitely more resources than you do at Virginia Tech. So that's the problem, is that, and this is what this year is going to be for James Franklin. We're going to find out, is that he needed all those resources just to get to that just shy of elite status. And that if he needed that, and if he didn't have that, then Penn State wouldn't have gotten close. Or is it that no, he's able to get a team to elite status, he's just shy of it, but he's not able to get them over that final hump? And I think that's the question. I lean probably somewhere in the middle. I think he needs a lot of support to get to that just shy of elite. And I think Virginia Tech will be able to give him most of it. But I don't think he's just this elite tier coach that can come into any program and just fix it. I don't think he's that. This program was not horrible, despite what the Saban says. They actually had some decent games last year. But again, I think we will see. I'm very interested in this. I could see this team just wrecking people's years. I could see this team going 8-4, and they eliminated 2 teams from the ACC championship. That's 100% what I could see. And in that case, then they go to a bowl game, and then they probably lose that bowl game too. But that's not the point. The point is that they did the over. So if you get some value on the over 6.5, I think that's a pretty decent take. I'd take that.
Yeah. I think we all agree. I guess the one thing that you're going through some greatest hits of James Franklin back there, and he really didn't turn it around at Penn State until he got Joe Moorhead as OC. And I guess maybe that's a concern, is now he's got a first-time offensive coordinator here, which makes me think he's going to meddle in the offense, and that could be a problem. Although if they've got the good running game pieces in place, maybe it's not a bad thing then, right?
Yeah.
All right. Far less interesting. Dave Doran, 14th season, or in dog seasons, that's 98 dog seasons. If we're doing like the dog years thing, it seems about that long. CJ Bailey, how about this? Not that good. I think this guy's way overrated. Look at his numbers, kids. Just if you look at the elements that make up my Apex, and you look at like his yards per attempt and his interceptions, not great. They lose their best receiver to USC. Thank you very much, NC State. They did pick up 2 receivers, Victor Snow and Davian Dozier, but from lower level conferences. Sun Belt, sure. I'm very comfortable in saying there's no conference that's worse at pass defense than the MAC. So let's just see what kind of currency translation we get on Victor Snow's 444 Ryan when it comes to the ACC. Like I said, I'm not a believer in the quarterback here. I don't want to spend a bunch of time here. It's the Dave Doran Groundhog Day thing. I think that they're overvalued somewhat based on the 7.5. Again, we're in the sleepy, bloated middle class of the ACC, and they just exemplify it. So going to put them in that small portfolio of basically just I think that there should be more towards the under, but the number seems right. Do you have strong feelings about NC State, Josh?
No, I think a couple interesting things. I think they're running back Duke Scott is pretty interesting. I think he's pretty talented. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in the backfield. And then Cedric Bailey they brought over JoJo Trader from Miami, who was one of his high school wide receivers, was CJ Bailey there at Chaminade Madonna Prep with Jeremiah Smith. I think if Trader can get back on track, he kind of stalled out at Miami, but he was a 4-star recruit coming in. He could be a guy, him and Dozier on the outside. This was an explosive passing. Yeah, they did okay offense, passing wise, explosively. So I could see TJ running around. Look, CJ succeeds against bad teams and then he struggles against good teams, right? Like Miami, he just absolutely looked terrible. Like he couldn't throw a forward pass. And so we'll see. They're not competing for the ACC, so we won't spend too much time on them. But JoJo Trader, watch out for JoJo Trader and Duke
Okay.
Scott. I like that.
Appreciate the heads up. Robert, strong feelings other than just like being strong feelings of indifference like me towards this program?
Yeah, there's just strong feelings of nothing this year, right? It's just like every year they come out and every year there's a bit of hype for them and it's they're really good, and then they go 7-5 last year in the regular season. I can't believe CJ Bailey's still playing. Was he like a freshman when he started? I feel like we've been talking about him for 4 years now. He got to be the last batch of the COVID ones. It's got to be, right?
He's only in his third year.
No, really?
Yeah, he started as a true freshman.
You know what? That's the Dave Doran dog seasons thing. It just seems like
exactly.
I could have sworn he beat Jordan Travis. Like he played against Jordan Travis and they beat Jordan Travis. That could be a wrong. Like I swear he beat Florida State the year before they were good. Maybe this is someone else. I don't even know. Whatever. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. It's crazy, right? It's just like this is just yet another mid-tier ACC team. There's so many of them. They're all basically copies of each other. Last year, you lost to Duke, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Pitt, and Miami. The schedule's easier this year. But you have Louisville there. You have maybe Syracuse, maybe Florida State. The schedule seems a bit easy, but at the same point in time, I don't love this team. Like you want Wake Forest, but I don't know. There's going to be more losses here. This team is like CJ Bailey 92 apex that's below average, right? So I don't. The defense also my career my metrics. The defense has hurt a little bit here too. So yeah, I think they could be maybe some more high scoring games, and maybe they could be like at Stanford. That could be a game where Stanford just suddenly decides to be really good that week, right? Like, that's the thing. This is not. I'd shy away from this, but yeah, I have no strong opinions on here. They probably go under, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's all NC State gets this year from us. Okay. Until they have a noteworthy something during the season. So I have more to say about this program. First bullet point says it all to me is Buster Faulkner goes to Florida. I think that is a huge development. Josh, you were, I think, the first person to really express a bullish opinion on him on this podcast. Thank you very much. I hate to say this because I like Brent Key as a head coach. I love just offensive line coaches, especially when they become head coaches. But I think this hurts the program a lot. Now you have a new quarterback in Alberto Mendoza. I think Haynes King was such a good fit for this program too, and we don't know what we have here. He might be good. He might be the guy that Kurt Cignetti had no interest in keeping in the program once his older brother ran away. The new DC last year, Blake Gideon, was a first-time defensive coordinator and took a big step back. I'd forgotten until I put this slide together, like how much we were like waving the red flag on this team, Robert, saying, fun team, good offense. This defense stinks. You remember that? Like we were early on that, quite early. So Gideon was run off. Now they get a guy, Jason Seymour. Maybe an upgrade here. He was at Marshall and Southern Miss, so he was learning under Charles Huff. Don't know what that means, considering that Charles Huff is an offensive guy, but at least somebody from a bigger conference saw something in him here. Season win total is 6.5. I think they're overvalued just because I think we've just seen peak Georgia Tech for a while here. To the degree that they're overvalued, I really don't know or can't say. I don't think it's bettable, but I think they clearly take a step back this year with just the new offensive coordinator. Is that fair, Josh?
Yeah, 100%. know if anybody knows what to expect from Georgia Tech offensively. They brought in Justice Haynes from Michigan,
Oh, that's right.
but it's like, what are they going to run? Alberto Mendoza could be really good, but who knows? Does seem like they're going to run the ball quite a bit. Mendoza had a couple of 50-yard runs last year and limited playing time. And then Justice Haynes was really explosive there for Michigan and Chip Lindsey's offense, but who knows, man? There's not a lot that I'm hitching my wagon to on this team. So let's wait and see. Let's see what they got offensively. And if Gotze does his thing, then maybe they could be, I don't know, 7-5, 8-4 again. I don't see them being crazy good.
Yeah, and the other thing too, and I just noticed this, is along with their defensive being overrated, I think that was papered over with this big luck metric here too, which legitimately they were a good team, but not as good as seen or as seemed. Robert, just to the point of the run game here, your metrics do not like their offensive, the returning offensive line from a starting point, right?
No, yeah. And I think I have a lot of questions about this team. One thing you didn't mention is that the offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, went to Florida, but he also took Aaron Philo with him, which is
Yeah.
who I would assume was the quarterback in waiting. That was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked good in some appearances too. Alberto Mendoza, that's a massive red flag for me. One, the fact that if he was so great, he was right there with Kurt Signetti. If like, why would you transfer, right? If he was so great, why did you be like, oh, this is our long-term answer? Why did he go after Josh Hoover in the portal? Why did Kurt Signetti go after Josh Hoover, right? So that's a giant red flag. I mean, that you then immediately land up at Georgia Tech. That's a pretty significant downgrade. Or maybe you're like, oh, okay, because Josh Hoover's very clearly in his last year of eligibility. He can't have that many more years either, right? So you're like, okay, whatever. He's the younger brother. I'll just sit on the bench for a year and then I'll be back to playing. This one and also the same one with Louisville when we talked about the transfer from Ohio State. I think with some of these guys, it's very clear that the team they're on has said, you're not starting ever, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, and then they just get out. And this is the thing, we talked about this podcast hasn't come out yet when as we're recording this, but it will come out tomorrow actually for when in real life. But we talk about the Senate bill that's going through the Senate for the Protect College Sports Act, and that they limit transfers to one transfer per student unless your head coach leaves, at which point then you get a free one. But the thing is, like transfers like that, Alberto Mendoza coming down to Georgia Tech, or the one going from Ohio State to Louisville, those just won't happen if that bill passes. Because before you could transfer down and then you do good, you could transfer back up. This way, it's a one-way trip. You're now just going to be playing the rest of your college career at Georgia Tech, at Louisville, which is not necessarily the end of the world. But if you're looking to be in an SEC or a Big Ten team, you're just not going to transfer. You would rather just sit on the bench for a couple more years, be like, I'm just going to sit this out. I'll wait it out for a year rather than trying to get actual playing time. So in that case, Georgia Tech would be starting a freshman, right? Georgia Tech would be starting a freshman this year. So again, that's a transfer that if the Senate, this Alberto Mendoza, they get a quarterback, that's a transfer that if the Senate bill passes, they would have no one. They'd have a freshman probably starting this year. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The offense was really the cornerstone of this team. The thing is, even last year, like they were not nearly as dominant as they looked. I think they went 9-3 in the regular season. They only beat Clemson by 3, which is interesting because it was at home and Syracuse had crushed them. The next week, Syracuse crushed them by even more. They lost to NC State and they lost to Pitt. And that had they won one of those games, they would have been going to the ACC championship, going to the college football playoff. They did only barely lose to Georgia by 7, but Georgia was also not great. That was a weird 16-9 Black Friday game. And then they lost to BYU in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Yeah, I thought they were better than them, but that defense really was not great. Now they're returning everyone, which I guess they'll be better this year, but just through experience. But that's not like the defense was pretty weak last year, and you can even see it there in the Saban 87. That's below average, right? The offense was the strength of this team, and you lose some of your best pieces on offense. I don't know where this team goes. This could be a rebuilding year. And I think the market is sniffing out the 6.5. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, Georgia Tech's great. They're going to be just blindly betting that over." I don't think they're going to be that great this year. And week 1 against Colorado, I did some stuff on Colorado. I think Colorado might be a better team than them. It's a 7.5 point spread. I think a lot of people are going to be taking Georgia Tech.
Really?
Yeah, I think I like Colorado over them week 1.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. It's news to me. I haven't looked at any lines yet, clearly. Okay. We all seem about the same little negative, slightly negative bent towards this team this year. Robert, it's time to party. We did it. The guy who's absolutely just killed our model for years, Gus Malzahn, he's done. He's out. He's out of Florida State. He's after killing our model at UCF. I love how I just asked AI to do this, and then it said, happy retirement, Gus, and it said, a Seminole legend. Yes, based on that 1 year at Florida State, Gus Malzahn is definitely a Florida State legend. Love you, AI. So I'm so split on this. I've got so many things going back and forth. I don't even know how to unwind this. I'm going to start with the huge bad luck metric, which that's like a hallmark of Gus. That's basically the sign of just how bad Gus screws with our models every year, because you had this at UCF, the same thing. And it's just, I don't know how much it regresses. Maybe it does because Gus is gone. I don't know. I don't know how much it was really bad luck. I don't know. I actually had them ranked highest in the ACC last year, but again, that's skewed by the Gus weird offense here. This 9.6 is an amalgamation of 2 awesome games and a bunch of crap. Like I said, high luck. If I take the luck out, they were 3rd in luck adjusted wins above average, so a good sign here. But then they're last in the ACC they're first in the ACC in GGAB Plus. Did the second, what? Okay, I don't know what I did here. Sorry, just ignore that 3rd bullet point. So Gus is gone. Tim Harris was the QB coach, and he was Gus's offensive coordinator at UCF, is the new guy. So maybe we get more Gus. I don't know. I think there's only one Gus here. I would be bullish, but for the fact that we now have Ashton Daniels at quarterback, look at these apexes at Stanford and Auburn, 82, 50, and 83. It's like the administration is just saying, sure, we'll give you 1 more year and we'll give you $50,000 for your quarterback. Deuce Robinson is, I think, the highest rated returning receiver by my metric in the ACC. The O-line has 2 starters from Auburn. They have a Bowling Green starter, a Stephen F. Austin starter, and Florida State backup, which is kind of concerning here. Tony White, as expected, did improve the defensive rating of the program. The season win total is 6.5. The under's taken a bunch of money. I just don't know where to go. I've got strong cross currents here. So I'm just going to say very passively, it's not unfairly valued. Nothing would surprise me here. Did I say that? There's a definite cap here with Ashton Daniels, but you've got an awesome receiver in Deuce Robinson. So I've got so many different trajectory points. I don't even know where to go. I'm just going to kind of pass on this one for Florida State. Do you get a stronger read on this program, Josh?
I think they brought back Norvell because they don't want to pay his buyout, and that's never a good reason to buy out or bring back a guy. Look, Florida State is clearly struggling. They don't have a lot of money right now in this program. I don't know where they go. And Norvell, actually, Tim Harris is the OC, but Mike Norvell is actually going to be the play caller. And I think when you get to that point, it can work. It worked for Brent Venables at Oklahoma this last year, but it usually doesn't. And I think it's just a sign of the beginning of the end. And look, this schedule is kind of brutal, to be honest, for an ACC schedule.
For an ACC, I mean, yeah, they draw a lot of short straws here, huh?
Yeah, at Louisville, at Miami, they go at Alabama. Yeah, even Clemson, Pittsburgh, and I don't know. Like I don't know. I would not bet the over on this. I think I'd bet the under on their 6.5. So I guess maybe we're missing a. Is there a week 0 game that they play? Oh yeah, they play New Mexico State. So I guess
that's a bug. We're working on that for the schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna give me that, right? You said who was it?
Yeah, New Mexico State.
New Mexico State.
Okay.
So that's a 30.5 point favorite. So yeah, that Central Arkansas, but the rest of these games, I don't. When you play Alabama and Florida out of conference, I'm a little getting to 6 wins. It's not a give me for sure.
John Summerall, Florida too, which I think is a little different from the Billy Napier Florida proposition, right?
Buster Faulkner, Florida, yeah, with Eric Singleton and Dallas Wilson and Jaden Baugh. That's a scary offense that they're setting up there.
And they got blown out by Florida last year too, 40-21. That was without John Summerall too. That was just with their interim head coach.
Yeah, they missed
Yeah.
both Cal and Stanford too. Just a paucity of gimmies here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what they did is they said we're not going to invest in the roster. We're not going to pay the buyout. We're just going to like wire $100,000 to the ACC schedule maker and say make this easier for us this year, just to pull the plug. This is just as rough as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll jump in here too because looking at the saving here, you can see the story of Florida State here, right? 94 in 2021 is a bit weak there. That was when people were like, oh, give Norvell some time. Then he got to 130, 135. That was the year they went undefeated, and then just fell off a cliff to 63, which 63 is really bad. That's probably among the worst savings in all of college football. They were one of the worst teams that year. I think they went 1-11, or yeah, it was 1-11, right? I think the only thing they beat was Cal, I think, if I remember correctly. Um, just
Yes.
yeah, I don't know how you just only beat Cal. I'm sure they've scheduled like an FCS team in there or something. Or I don't know. There should have been another win on that schedule other than Cal. But then last year, yeah, 114, which okay, a little bit above average, but again, just a massive underperformance. Great against Alabama, but then you lose to Stanford somehow. You went on this whole run where, and also you cleaned up against Kent State 66-10, and against an FCS team 77-3. So that kind of boosts your saving score there a little bit. But other than that, there was a thing. Remember, they're like, oh, they haven't won an ACC conference game in like forever, right? Like their first one was against Wake Forest, and then they're at Clemson. They got crushed. They lost 24-10 in that game. Then they beat Virginia Tech, but then they lose to NC State, and then they lose to Florida badly. Was the problem Gus Malzahn? I don't know. I don't understand how this team beat Alabama and then got destroyed the rest of the season. That makes no sense to me at all. But it happened. It doesn't change the fact that it happened.
Our problem
I
was Gus Malzahn, to be clear.
Yeah, he did screw with our model. Him, and I think there's another team that screwed with our model a lot last year too. I think it was UCF, or was that 2 years ago? I can't remember.
It was the Gus. It was 2
That
years
was
ago.
also Gus Malzahn. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, he really screws with the model.
Yeah.
But yeah, this schedule is pretty brutal. You've got Louisville, Miami. Clemson is not an easy out either way. Okay, you can say they're not the best team, but also Florida State isn't the best team either. Like there's no easy layups on the schedule. I guess Boston College is the closest you get to that, but that's not even particularly fun. I see a path to like if you do New Mexico State, Central Arkansas, and Boston College. Okay, that's 3 wins. Good job. We need 4 more. Virginia, maybe Pitt. This is where it starts getting a lot tougher. I mean,
yeah. Did you
yeah,
count? Did you count the week 0-1?
yeah. So you can't. So if you go Boston College, Central Arkansas, and New Mexico State, we're at 3. Then what? NC State, Virginia. We're now up to 5. And then you go Pitt, that's 6. And now then you have to win one of SMU, Alabama, Louisville, Miami, Clemson, and Florida. None of those are fun games. So like a bowl is a stretch here, let alone that. So yeah, I now maybe Alabama falls apart this year, and maybe Louisville is really bad, or maybe Pitt is bad or something. I don't know, but none of those are fun games. Also, you're going to Alabama, you're at Pitt, you're even at Boston College. Maybe Boston College just decides this is the year we're going to get Norvell fired. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough to see how this is a positive experience for this Florida State team this year. But again, everyone basically is this is it for Norvell. And usually when everybody says this is it for this coach, that is usually it for the coach, but sometimes they just turn it around. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, the one thing I would say too is just kind of on the other side of that is you have a receiver like Deuce Robinson, you're kind of not out of any of the games unless you're really outclassed. The ones that are like not hopeless are you've got more than a puncher's chance when you have a guy like that.
Yeah.
He could go over 200 yards against any of these middle class teams. But now, am I going to get plus 150 to figure that out? No, I've got better things to do, even with Robert's money. So happy retirement, Seminole legend Gus Malzahn. Yeah, yes, Josh.
And you got Ashton Daniels.
That's the thing. Yeah,
it's the ball, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. All right, this is just guesswork to me. Congratulations to your reigning ACC champs, Duke. You lost your quarterback and your best receiver and your second best receiver, I'm guessing, in Mr. Brown, and we've talked about them already. I have no idea. I'll put it this way. I have a really hard time to make an emphatic case about this guy with 100 apex at the weird-ish San Jose State offense is going to do at a middle-class program in the ACC. Okay, nice retention here in the ACC on the offensive line, although Roberts say a little different. Haven't seen it from the defense yet, from Manny, which is a concerning sign. So total is 5.5. Overs take a little bit of money. I just have no interest in trying to put all the pieces together and come up with a thesis that's entirely a guessing game here. So I'm going light here. Just you lose a lot, and I'm not sure what you gain at quarterback, and that's where I start and end with this. Josh?
I think you nailed it. I don't have much more to say. Nate Shepard, unless he's just like unbelievable and runs for 2,000 yards, I don't know what they do offensively. And like you said, their defense is just not very good.
Yeah. Short and sweet and to the point. Robert, you got more on Duke here?
Yeah, a little bit more. My model or the returning production on defense looks horrible. That's pretty rough. O line also looks a bit rough too, but the defense is very bad. Bad O line, bad D line, run defense and coverage snaps. That's really low there. It's so crazy that the reigning ACC champs are 5.5, but they lost their good quarterback to Miami. And now you're like bringing in some guy from San Jose State that was like iffy at best. This is really concerning here. And just going through last year's schedule, it is nuts that a 7-5 team won the ACC. But the thing is, this is a team that got blown out by Illinois, also got beat pretty easily by Tulane. They lost by a touchdown to Tulane. And then they lost to Georgia Tech and Virginia, which were two of the better teams in the conference. And they also lost to UConn somehow, too. And yet somehow they're the ACC champions. It's just like it was the weirdest season. I think you could, every year we have 10 conferences, so every 10, 11 conferences. So every year there's like a bunch of these that you do run this a bunch of, but like a weird fluky season where they looked horrible in their non-con, but it didn't matter because in their conference schedule they looked amazing. They looked not amazing. They looked okay. It's the weirdest fluky thing that they won the ACC and that they're never going to go to the playoff after losing to UConn. But yeah, it was the weirdest flukiest season, and I don't think they can repeat that. I don't think so. I think this is going to have to be a bit of a rebuild year for Diaz here. So I think it is weird that the defense, again, when you look at Manny Diaz's Saban there, interesting 104 head coach 2021, that was at Miami, and then 136 Apex, 136 Saban as a defensive coordinator, and then 154 as another defensive coordinator. I believe that was what week was that? What school was that?
Was he Penn State?
I think so, yeah. So very high defensive Saban there, and then we're right back down to even. Duke, right? It's crazy how we just immediately smash right back down to even the second he has head coaching responsibilities, right? And I think great defensive coordinator, very smart. They've done a lot. He's been a really great team to bet on, and as a better. But I think he's a far better defensive coordinator, and the fact that the defense here is weak is concerning. So, yeah, I don't want to touch this. I'll be betting Duke at plus 7.5 in some random game here, probably against for North Carolina or something. But yeah, I don't think this team is that good this year. I think they had a good quarterback in Darian Mensah, and I think that's what clearly won the ACC for them. Because if not, then they wouldn't have won the ACC. But yeah, I don't think they can replicate that again.
Yeah, to go across sports, this is your point, the 104, 105, 106. I believe that we would call that Manny being Manny, if you guys remember that from the old Red Sox. Again, yeah. Who had the worst season in the NFL? Was it the Jets? No, it was the NFL's 33rd team, the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, they did have bad luck to accompany their horrible loss record here. I'm wondering, even if you adjust for that, they're still 13th in the conference if you take the luck out of their wins above average. Here's just I love this bullet point so much because it encapsulates why I think this is not going to work. 2 transfers from Richmond. Any idea why?
They played Richmond last year and beat them.
Yes. And yeah, their idiot front office thinks they discovered something and they got 2 guys from Richmond.
More specifically, Bill Belichick was like, "Hey, that player looks good. I want him."
Yes. Yeah. I can make
that's like in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie when Rocket's, I want that guy's leg, and then there's just I just thought it'd be funny if I got that guy's leg. That's what that seems like.
I think he's looking for another Rob Ninkovich, to go back to some of your Patriots teams there, back when I cared about the NFL. I've got such mixed signals on this that I don't know what to do. Bobby Petrino is, I'd say, almost unassailable as an offensive coordinator. And he will have at his quarterback, to use the other side of that, the very assailable, if that's a word, Billy Edwards. I'll just leave it at that. Steve Belichick, as I did predict, did improve the defense quite a bit here. For the defensive starters for transfers, here's where it falls apart. Their wins last year, I know they were unlucky. Maybe they should have beaten some other teams, but Charlotte, Richmond, Syracuse, and Stanford, the teams that they beat combined for 6 FBS wins last season. Congratulations. Thumbs up from BuckMetrics on that. The season win total is a more reasonable 4.5. I think it was 7.5 last year. That seems fair to me. I am only interested in this team to see what Bobby Petrino does with Billy Edwards. That just fascinates me. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, same. This team is dysfunctional at best. Bill Belichick should have just retired about 5 years ago and called it a day. Kept his legacy intact after Tom Brady was gone. Because the schedule is not easy either. I just don't see. I guess it's a 4.5 season win total, but man, it's hard to see them do. I don't even see the vision of the team. I don't see. You bring in Billy Edwards with Bobby Petrino. What are we doing?
Literally, yes.
So I don't see how. I don't see a path for them being successful whatsoever. So I'm not super interested in UNC.
Yeah, Robert, I'm going to ask you a really unfair, tough question here. What is North Carolina? What are they supposed to be doing well this year?
Billy Edwards was like not horrible sometimes in as being quarterback at Maryland for 1 year. He got injured last year. That's why Maryland was in really deep trouble, but he was like okay at times. Like that's the best we have. Again, there's a lot of questions here. One, you're Bill Belichick. You can just say the name Tom Brady. You can't get any college kid to be like, hey, I want to be coached by the same guy who coached Tom Brady. None. This is the best you can have. Like, you're telling me you can't get the one who transferred from Ohio State. You can't get that kid. You can't get that kid to be like, hey, I want to be coached by the same person who coached Tom Brady. This is the best we can do. We have to get something from Maryland. We have to get a transfer from Maryland. It's crazy.
He barely played. Or no, was he in Wisconsin? Am I mistaken here?
He was at Wisconsin.
Oh, he was okay at Maryland, and then he went to Wisconsin, and then he got injured at Wisconsin. He got hurt
First
early.
play or something crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. So we never really did see what he could have been, but again, out for a whole year, now coming back from injury. That defense is slightly better. I don't know, but like, look, some of these games last year weren't even close. This isn't like okay, this team was almost there last year. The 48-14 loss to TCU in the night game that game was a classic for the only simple reason that we got to the point late in the game where Kurt Purstreet's dog came up and was on the TV. Remember that? That's a classic for that reason alone. You lost 34-19, 34-9 to Scott Frost. You lost 38-10 to a bad Clemson team. You also lost at Cal. Half the conference lost to Cal somehow last year.
Like they actually should have won that.
Probably. And then you barely lose to Virginia. But then you barely beat Stanford. And then you were close against Duke, which is more indicted of Duke than of you. And then you lose to your rival 42-19 in the end of the season. And also you lost 28-12 against Wake Forest. It's like this team was so weird last year. Sometimes they'd be close, and other weeks they'd just be like, it's not even remotely close. They look good one week, like they look good. Oh, okay, they beat Charlotte and they beat Richmond. Maybe they'll do something against UCF, and then they just get crushed, right? And then okay, they got crushed. They're going to get crushed by Clemson, and then they do, right? So it was the weirdest year for them last year. They were up and down, and more down though than up, more down. But I don't know. This year you get Notre Dame. I don't know why this team thinks they can play Notre Dame. You have TCU again. You have Clemson. You have Miami. You have Louisville. And you have Syracuse again. The 4 wins last year. You mentioned the 4 wins they had last year. I'm going to put an asterisk beside Syracuse. So I call it 3.5 kind of. So this is the thing. Like there's not, looking at this team, I'm not seeing any, there's some improvement. Bob Petrino's pretty good as an offensive coordinator, but maybe the offense can be better, but the problem wasn't one of the problems of this team was offense last year, but the defense was another big problem too. If you look at the returning production, they have more rushing and receiving than last year, and their O line looks decent. Their offense, the defense looks pretty decent too, but I don't know. It's just this team was not close last year. They would need to have a huge revitalization to even get close to competitive. Billy Edwards is maybe a step in the right direction, but it's not like this team.
No.
As I mentioned, this team is not one step away from it. We're like 3 to 4 steps away from it, right? So
They're at least a Billy Edwards sized body bag away from being respectable. I'll say that, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right. Josh, I think you and I are going to agree on this team based on your comments. I really like Wake Forest this year. Jake Dickert, just like a pure football coach. Now he gets basically to undo what Freddie Kitchens did to Gio Lopez last year. Gets 7 transfers in. I guess the big one is this one Dame Davis with a gaudy apex from a really bad UTEP team. Now, how that translates, is that a good stats for that team guy? Is that just a good stats against the Conference USA pass defenses? Or do we say this guy got a 456 apex without a competent person throwing him the football? So that could go any way. Huge improvement on the defense, despite they had a very low improvement metric last year, which is just, that's Jake Dickert. Defense now this year, I love this. You've got improvement last year on the coach's side of the ball, and you've got green all here right there. You've got great experience, total experience, returning starts, total cumulative experience, and a huge improvement metric right here. I love that. This 5.5 is a joke. It's not the easiest schedule in the world, but I think they go way over 5.5. This is just the wrong number to me. So I'm super confident in this. Josh?
Yeah, look, Gio Lopez is reuniting with his offensive coordinator when he was at South Alabama, Rob Ezell.
Oh, okay.
And look, I like Davis too. Cam Shanks that they brought in, he was pretty good, and I know they like him there at Wake Forest. Carlos Hernandez looked great near the end of the year when they really started using him inside and outside. So I think this passing game is going to take a huge step forward. Ty Clark's coming back. They got brought in Katie Daniels at running back. So they're loaded on that side of the ball. And look, Dickert has made great hires on the
Yes.
offensive side of the ball. Like Eric Morris is
Always.
now at Oklahoma State. Yeah. So I'm Ben Arbuckle, who went to Oklahoma, and now Robbie Zell. And we know he's going to be good defensively because he's just proven that over and over. I think Dicker is like a rising star as a coach. And man, 5.5 is absolutely nuts in my opinion. And it's not juiced too bad, not compared to some of the other ones that we've seen. So I like this number. I'd definitely take the over on it.
Robert, I'm going to ask you a very pointed question. Just saying, last year, Jake Dickert did something. He won 9 games with Robbie Ashford as his starting quarterback. Would Bill Belichick been able to do that last year?
I don't. No, I don't think so. Right?
Pretty
Robbie
comfortable.
Ashford, not particularly great, right? Definitely coached up. Just quick point here, and this is one of the things I look for in coaching here. When you go to the Saban metric there, look at Wake Forest, 2021, 128, then 116, then 81, 81. That was ended up the firing of their head coach. Jake Dickert comes in immediately up to 112, right? Turnarounds, like, that's exactly what I look for with a coach. It's immediately where, hey, we're turning the ship around. We're getting a lot better. They had struggled for a couple of years there. Immediate turnaround is exactly what you look for. And look at the returning production down there. I've got pretty good, like 79, 80s across the board. That's pretty good. Gio Lopez, that's a question mark. That's a bit of a concern. But again, we went 9 and 3 with, or no, sorry, 8 and 3 with Robbie Ashford last year. So if you could do that, then yeah. The schedule is not particularly fun. You've got Miami there, you got Louisville, you got SMU, so that's 3. But again, you still got lots of clear paths to get to 6 easily. Like you've got Akron, Merrimack, Purdue, that's 3 already. You got Stanford, you've got Duke, there's a Cal. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot they can do here. Last year's losses were to NC State, Georgia Tech, Florida State. That was one of their better games. I think that was basically that we have to do well in this game. If not, we're going to get Norvell's going to be fired this game. And then they lost at Duke, but somewhat near. It was 49-32. I remember that game being somewhat close or later in. And then they beat Mississippi State, which was like a not great but okay as in the bowl games. Yeah, huge improvement last year. And again, everything shows green for me this year. I think they're in pretty good shape. The 5.5 is crazy. If I'm not going to project this team to be in the ACC championship game. But if you told me they were in the ACC championship game against like a Miami, wouldn't be the craziest thing. If they beat Miami, if they lose to Miami and then beat Louisville and beat SMU, they're probably in the championship game themselves, right? And if you told me that they were just better than Louisville and SMU, that I would say, yep, I could see that. I could see them being in the championship game.
Yep. Yeah. Not as much of a stretch as people think, in my opinion. All right, Robert, what have I said my weaknesses are? Kirkland vodka and a first-year head coach in a really weird situation. And this is where we are. Tosh Lapoy, I don't, other than he played for Cal and he's a good recruiter, I just don't get it. I've said this and I'll keep on saying it. I wouldn't want him coaching my team's defense. I wouldn't want him as my team's defensive coordinator, let alone as a head coach. So what does he do? He brings in first-time offensive and defensive coordinators. They were the luckiest team in the conference last year. How about this? How about they have probably the most overhyped quarterback in all of college football in Jerron Kiawe Sagapola-Tule. 85 apex. You would never guess that from everybody's in love with this guy. And I have nothing personal against him. I have something personal against the people that don't get. This guy has 5 highlight plays, and that's his entire portfolio. And the rest of the resume sucks. Now, they do get Ian Strong, who was basically the whole thing at Rutgers last year. Really good receiver. They had the worst running game last year. Their offensive line is 3 part-time starters and 2 transfers. So I don't see enough transformational stuff to make me think this offense is going to be anything more. Sure, maybe they get the random highlight play, but congratulations. That got your coach fired last year. 8 of the starters are transfers on defense. Great. Under your first-time defensive coordinator. And they have a total of 4 FBS starts. So this is truly my coach hated me, so I couldn't get on the field at Michigan State kind of guy all across your defense here. The season win total is 6.5. I can't go. I'm going to cut in line to go under on this one. I think this team is in such a bad position. And this kind of bet, I'm incapable of passing it on, and so many times it screws me, but I'm going to do it again. I think this team, people don't understand just how bad this team's going to be. 6.5 to me is a joke. Am I off here, Josh?
No. Look, when you have a first-time head coach who hires an OC and a DC, like that's a first-time OC and DC, like you're just trying to be way too cute. Like you just think you're smarter than everybody else. And look, we know Tosh can recruit his butt off. But man, if you just don't have a system, and I'm with you, man. I think with JKS, I think it's just first impressions, right? Like people saw him play early on. Maybe they saw like the second half of the North Carolina game or something. I don't know, but like he wasn't very consistent.
No.
So he has a strong arm. That's essentially like what he's got, and he's a Hawaii quarterback. Okay, that's really where it ends at this point. There's a lot of development that needs to be had there, and I is that like Cal? Is that going to be the place that's going to happen? My guess is he transfers out after this year because it's not a good year, and so I'm right along there with you.
The only thing that scares me is I do Rolovich as a QB coach. I think that there's some upside there now. Because Tosh Lapoy is smarter than everybody else, as you point out, he couldn't make Rolovich his offensive coordinator, which I would probably just be neutral on this team. But nope, that's not how it's going to go. So, Robert, your metrics here like this team a lot more than I do in my diatribe here. Do you lie with your numbers or with me here?
On the offensive side, one, you mentioned they were the worst GGAB, so only up from there, right? That's not receiving 122. So that's percentage of last year's snaps. So O-line looks pretty good too. Defense got cleaned out. That's rough. The thing is, it's weird, right? This last year they went 7-6, 7-5 in the regular season, lost the bowl game. Like, why did they fire their head coach? 7-5 is not amazing, but you're Cal. What are you doing here? Then you look under the surface a bit more, then yeah, obviously a very lucky team. Look at who they beat, right? Or more specifically, who they lost to. Okay, they beat Oregon State. They beat Boston. They beat Minnesota, which Minnesota is not the greatest team either. They beat Boston College. They beat North Carolina. They randomly beat Louisville and SMU. So you crush those two teams, or you beat those two teams, ending their championship hopes there. But look at the teams you lost to. You lost to San Diego State, a Mountain West team. You lost 34-0 against San Diego State, a Mountain West team. You lost to Duke, ACC champs, but we're going to put an asterisk on that too. You lost to Virginia Tech which had an interim coach. You lost to Virginia, and then you lost to Stanford, possibly the only other worse ACC team than you. So, and then you lose to Hawaii, a Mountain West team, a trend for them last year in the bowl game. It's up and down, right? I think the quarterback here, and I say his name poorly, yeah, massively overhyped. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, this guy's great." Yeah, not so great. Not so great. I think he's okay. He's got some cool plays, but very inconsistent. As you can see, like week to week, like how do you beat Louisville and the next week lose to Stanford? Right? Like it's crazy stuff like this. And you got blown up by Stanford. You lost to 21 points at Stanford. And it's not even that far for you. It's the weirdest. It was the weirdest up and down season. So okay, you fire your head coach. Now you got Tosh Luploy. Again, look, the thing is though, but as you mentioned, it's a bit misleading. Those 3 years there with Dan Lanning, I think, yeah, it was because he joined probably, you can kind of see he probably joined after 2022. 140, 130, 137, right? Those are very clearly a lot of Dan Lanning in that number, right?
Mhm.
So we have no idea how much of that is Tosh Luploy and how much of that is Dan Lanning. So you've got first time coordinators for offensive coordinator and defense coordinator. Yeah, this, like, I will just say that straight up, and we're not previewing the Big Ten yet, but like week one, they are technically like either basically a pick against UCLA. I think I've seen the -1.5 +1.5 versus UCLA. That's nuts. There is no way that they should be competitive with UCLA. And I think maybe if that's the number there, I think that means that they're basically penciling in Cal being like a good team or a decentish team. And I think they're not. I think that's why they should not be that close against UCLA. So that's why I'm penciling in the under 6.5. I think it's not a bad play. I think it's a pretty good play.
That's a great point. Just the starting point of the trajectory is wrong, and so they're coming to a bad number in the 6.5. All right, a few more here. Syracuse. I like Syracuse this year. They get Steve Angeli back. He was hurt against Clemson. We talked about that game earlier. 131 apex against some legitimate teams here. This isn't against Boston College and Stanford, Tennessee, Connecticut, and Clemson. I'll take that. Remember, he was highly regarded, left Notre Dame after he couldn't get the starting job there. Their average game grade, and again, against decent competition here, was a -2.2 with Ricky Collins, who, where did he land up? He's in Kennesaw.
Yeah.
Kennesaw State, the worst of that trade. The game grade dropped by a mere 19 points. The defense, disappointingly, was not coming together, even though Browns and offense are defensive guys. So they bring in a tremendous hire here with Vince Karras, the Toledo DC. Literally the only thing that Toledo did well, which is going to be interesting at UConn. They only have one home game here for this long stretch, which is rough. The 4.5 is too low. I just think that the return of Angeli is getting way overlooked. They're just a totally different team. There's just an appreciation for the difference with Angeli and with Ricky Collins, future Kennesaw State Owl. The 4.5 is just too low. This team's undervalued. I'm definitely going the over here. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I could see it. I think if Angeli comes back and he's healthy and all that, then yeah, this is definitely a number that's just like simply too low. But it's a lot of wait and see with Syracuse because of that. So at least offensively, and look, they just spent like $2 million on this like wide receiver coming in, Calvin Russell, and then Russell tears his Achilles in spring ball. So that was supposed to be like their star, kind of outside wide receiver. So we'll see. We'll see if they can overcome that. But I like everything that you said, and you're selling me definitely on Syracuse over 4.5.
Brown's been shown capable of developing offensive players too. It's not like it's not the Miami model. I'll put it that way. He can develop. Not that the Miami's not developed.
Yeah.
He can get a lot out of a little on offense at least. So, Robert, are you buying the Syracuse resurgence here?
Yeah, I definitely am. I think I've already bet some Syracuse, and I think after this, I'm going to go bet more Kennesaw State under. But no, I think people really underestimate this. Literally, so week one they played Tennessee. I think it says it's home. I don't think Tennessee visited them. That's something
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, they were at home. They hosted Tennessee.
Yeah, Tom Bishop just ran roughshod over I think it wasn't a home game. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe it was a home game.
Cross next to it, which usually means a neutral site.
Oh, it was neutral site. That makes sense. But they lost 45-26. And I remember this game vividly because I was on the Tennessee minus 14.5, and I was a bit scared there for a bit. Syracuse was doing stuff. That was a bit scary there. Connecticut, they won 27-20. Okay, not the greatest win ever, but a decent win against a team that did stump stuff last year. They beat Colgate 66-24 as an FCS team. I think that's probably not why. That's why it's probably not in your apex there. Yeah. And then the Clemson game, 34-21, dominant game. Angeli looked amazing, and it's like, hey, maybe this team can make a run for the ACC championship. And then late in the fourth quarter, Angeli goes down. It doesn't matter for the score of the game, and then Ricky Collins comes in, and then we just have massive drop off. They don't win a single game for the rest of the year, and then they don't go to a bowl in any way. I don't think they got close in any game for the rest of the year. I'm just looking down the list here. The closest they got was SMU 31-18. Just looking down the list, it was so bad. They lost 38-3 at Duke, 31-18 at SMU, 30-13 against Pitt, 41-16 at Georgia Tech, 27-10 at North Carolina, 38-10 at 70-7 at Notre Dame, and then 34-12 hosting Boston College. It was so bad. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh, that's the real Syracuse. And it's no. Clemson was like, okay, was Clemson a good team last year? No, but they were like an average team, 7-6, 7-5, whatever. That's what Syracuse crushed that team with Angeli at full power. It's not like they were like, that's how bad Clemson was. Like they were good. And the thing is, look, you could see the average game grade there. Just the massive downgrade between Angeli and Ricky Collins. And that explains everything, right? Okay, yeah, some of those numbers aren't great, but if they actually had an offense, those games would have been very different, right? And you got a good defensive coordinator from Toledo, and look at those defensive returning production numbers. They're pretty good. My model is saying the production returning is saying the offensive line's a bit weak, but you're returning a lot on the rush, and receiving's a bit low. But honestly, I love this play here. 4.5. I want to see how far this team could go. The thing is, I think a lot of people forget how far we are removed from this Syracuse team knocking off Miami from going to the ACC championship game just 2 years ago. We forget about that game. And yeah, look, it's just even then last year you could see it in the stats. 108 in Fran Brown's first year here, which is average, a bit above average, which for Syracuse is pretty good. Then just crashed down to 58, and the offense was the huge problem there at 59. So no, I think it was just Ricky Collins. I think that's the problem, and I think 4.5 is great. You have an FCS team, so it's already 20% of the way there. Then you've got Boston College, you've got NC State on the schedule, you've got UConn again, you've got Cal. That's 5 right there. I can easily see this team getting to 6, 7, maybe even 8 wins. And if this team, you've got Notre Dame and
if you just throw out Notre Dame, SMU, and Louisville is just as not possible, which I think just to be very conservative.
Yeah,
it's not like it's a stretch to win any other game. They're like coin flips are better.
Yeah.
What am I missing here? Who am I? Who outclassed them? Maybe Pitt is a step ahead of them too.
Maybe.
I mean, you've got a lot of chances to get to 5.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get this team at plus 7.5 hosting Cal week 2. I cannot wait for that. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be plus 7.5. I'm gonna be signing in on FanDuel at 6:00 on Sunday night, and it's going to say Syracuse plus 7.5 hosting Cal, and I'm going to be like, yes, please. And then it'll go to 8.5 on Friday night, and I'll be like, yes, please. And that's what's going to be, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, 2 more here. Considerably less interesting. Okay. Stanford, look, great. You hired a Stanford guy. Congratulations. Your offensive coordinator is a Stanford guy. Congratulations. Your quarterback is Davis Warren. Wow. The OL returns intact, which I don't think is a good thing because this was a bad everything last year on offense. It's a below average defense. They twice have back-to-back road games, weirdly. Season win total is 3.5. The over's taken some money somehow. I'm having a hard time seeing 4 wins here. Again, I'm a sucker for first-time coach in a really bad situation. Now you get Davis Warren. I'll throw this in that little portfolio or the portfolio of little small bets because I can't believe the over's taking money here. I don't get it. So I just don't want to waste a lot of my breath on this program, but there's so much to not like here. Is that fair, Josh?
Actually, just a quick thing before we pass out to Josh. I just want to note that this is another bugged one. There is a week 0 Hawaii game on there. So
Okay. Thank you for that heads up. I like that. That's
the line.
Yeah. Okay.
With Stanford laying 3.5.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I know. Any positive signs you can point to here on Josh?
Not really. Who knows with this offensive coordinator, right? Davis Warren is your quarterback. I got nothing here unless Hawaii's certainly not a get me. Like, I think they're gonna come out and win that game. And then who else are you gonna beat on the schedule? Elon. I don't like these games. All these games are teams other than Cal that I think are considerably better than Stanford. So
Yeah. Where's the fourth win?
look, the lines right now, I think they're favored against Hawaii, and
they give him Elon.
and Elon.
Give him Cal, even though that's a coin flip. It's just
The
two
rest
bad
are like
teams.
double digits too, right? You
Yes.
have Georgia Tech
Yeah.
+4 and NC State +6, but the rest are double digits. I don't know.
Look,
Where's
I'm
the
not a
third
fan
win?
of Taylor,
Where's
but
the win?
there's a foundation there, and maybe they can come out of nowhere. But with Davis Warren, this has got to be like, if they do it, it's going to be with like some backup quarterback we haven't heard of that comes as a dual threat guy.
Yeah.
And then next year is at a Big Ten school or something.
And that was Bear Bachmeyer, and he transferred last year.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Couple things I just want to point out here. One, look at Stanford Saban for the last 5 years. Just look at how horrible that is.
Yeah.
69, 70, 61, 72, 72. That's with Frank Reich there for 72 there for last year. And then you're like, oh, we're going to hire Tavita Pritchard. Okay, he was a horrible defensive coordinator up there. He's not even good defensive coordinator. He was bad too. So why did you hire this guy? Because we don't have data from him for 3 years. He was probably some offensive assistant or defensive assistant or something, not officially called a defensive coordinator. But when he was a defensive coordinator, he wasn't even good. So Davis Warren, also not good. This was another one where it's like, where did he even go? This was back to the horrible Michigan season where they had no offense after Harbaugh left and the entire team left because they were under NCAA sanction. But basically, Warren, I think, was the worst of the two. It was him and
Orgy,
yeah. And he was the worst of the two, I think.
Oh, by far.
I mean, both of them were bad, but I think he was the worst. So that's the best we have.
Yes. Davis Warren loves to throw the ball to the other team. He has a fetish for it.
The thing was, last year you had Ashton Daniels, and he was like, he did things. He's now Florida State's quarterback, so okay, good luck with that for Florida State. But this is now someone who didn't do anything, and like I think this is a tougher schedule than last year. Some of these games last year were just brutal. I mean, it's crazy that like you only lost to Florida State by 7. You beat San Jose State by 1. You beat Boston College by 10. Oh no, you did beat Florida State. You beat Florida State by 7. You beat San Jose State by 1, Boston College by 10, and then you beat Cal by 21. And then everything else was not particularly close. And like you also lost Hawaii. You lost to Hawaii 23-20 last year in the season opener. Now you were at Hawaii, but to be fair, you're Stanford, so it's not even that far. Like you're only a 2-hour plane ride from California to Hawaii. So no, yeah, this is pretty bad. I'm pretty out on this team. I think this is going to be just a crushing season, and I'm not sure why they made this higher. And everything about this seems bad. And also, just give me Hawaii +3.5, 100%.
Yeah. Yep. Agree. All right, last one. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but my gosh, I have to Boston College, it just went south. I was really wrong about this team last year. I thought year 2 would be good under Bill O'Brien. It certainly wasn't. I'm just going to call 2024 a false positive. They did have regression level bad luck, but I think that sometimes you make your own bad luck, and when you have just crappy quarterback play like they did last year, that's what we saw. I have to just mention, this is so dire. I would be alarmed if I saw this at Akron. Their new quarterback, Mason McKenzie, had a 74 apex at Saginaw State. Really
Yeah.
well done. That is just the stink of death on this program. I don't even care about the rest of it, and none of it's really good. I guess the only good thing is they miss Cal and or no, that's not even good. They miss Cal and Stanford, like the two teams that you want on your schedule in the ACC. 3.5. I don't see. Look, maybe you beat Maine. Maine's not even that good. I'm having a hard time seeing the third win, let alone the fourth win. So I'm definitely taking the under on Boston College. Josh, just tell me, you're a college football fantasy guy. What round is Mason McKenzie going in the drafts here?
There's 30 rounds in the draft, and he goes around 30. I will say, Mason McKenzie's super exciting to watch on film. The guy, like, great runner. Man, I actually watched like 10 minutes of a highlight of one game specifically, and he had probably 3 turnovers in that game, fumbled the ball. The guy's a horrible decision maker. He's going to make some like fun plays, but this is a disaster. You did that at like D2 level. Yeah. I don't know what Bill O'Brien's doing. He clearly, again, these NFL guys that are coming back to college, like they're just not. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I'm out on Boston College. I'm with you. The under here is appealing for sure.
Yeah. Robert, you going to make a case on behalf of your guy Bill O'Brien here?
No, and again, this is another classic case. When you look here, this is like when you look at the Saban, this is actually like a worse case, worse than Manny Diaz. It's okay, great. He's a great. I think that's an OC. He's a great offensive coordinator, and I think he went off to, I think the NFL for a year, or it was like Ohio State. He was an offensive assistant somewhere for a year. That's the blank there, and then
Okay.
104 back to average, and then sorry, where was he?
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then back to average 104 and then 72 last year. This is just, I don't know what Boston College a long time ago was like a decent program, and you just look at the top line there with the Saban. It's not been an elite program for a while here. Last year was bad. They won 2 games. They won their first game against an FCS team. I have the logo here. I want to say that's Fordham. I could be wrong. It's a team with an F on it. I don't know. Again, that's not
It
a
is.
great sign if I don't know. It's Fordham. Okay, that was a lucky guess. If I don't know your logo, it doesn't bode well for you. And then they lost every game except for the last week of the season where they beat Syracuse, which again I'm giving that an asterisk. So yeah,
Basically
that's
Fordham.
basically Fordham. And none of these other games were like particularly close. You lost by 4 to Cal. Okay, great. And you lost by 2 to Michigan State. Michigan State also fired their head coach. So those are actually 2 teams. You almost beat 2 teams to fire their head coach. So why didn't you fire your head coach? I'm confused why Bill O'Brien still has a job. I guess it was just too early. But this year is not going to be too early. This is 100% Bill O'Brien gets fired this year. And if you're an NFL guy, you cannot sit here and be like, hey guys, this is going to be a good year for us. No, it's not. There's nothing. The best thing you got was you got a D2 transfer from Saginaw State. That's the best. This is your quarterback. This is a team that competed I think almost knocked out Florida State in the year that they went undefeated. And now we're down to, hey, this is the best we got. That Florida State took their quarterback a couple of years ago. Like they actually had a not horrible team a couple of years ago. And last year they were horrible, and this is getting even worse potentially this year. So, yeah, again, I'm with you. I see maybe 1 win. Maybe like I see the Maine win, sure. But Maine made the FCS playoffs last year. So I don't even know if that's a gimme.
Yeah, with no Cal or Stanford, how are you going to even get to 3?
Yeah.
Unless Mason McKenzie just runs, I don't know, just doesn't throw the ball. I guess that's the path. All right. A lot of analysis there. Some of it interesting, most of it good. Our wrap-up questions for the ACC. One upset involving an ACC team. Josh, I will let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I got 2, one a little less spicy, and then another one that hopefully it's a decent spice level here. So I got Duke Tulane, and I'm going to take Tulane upsetting Duke. It's a 9.5 point spread, so it's okay, but I think Tulane's going to be pretty decent this year, and I just got a lot of questions about Duke. So
okay, I have a lot of questions about the Tulane coach. I'll just keep it at that for now.
I will agree with that. I do like. We could talk about the rest of the roster though.
Fair.
Yeah, we need to do the AAC I have the same concerns with you. Okay, now here's a deeper cut. And do
Yeah.
I think this is actually going to happen? Maybe not, but this would totally be what Mario Cristobal would do. So
Oh
I'm going
boy.
to say Virginia Tech upsets
Okay.
Miami
Yeah.
at the end of the year, 16.5-point spread. I could totally see if Franklin hits the ground running, they got a great running attack. I think they got a shot to upset Mario in a November game where he struggled every year at Miami except this last year. So that's my upset pick.
I like it. I can actually kind of see that scenario to a degree. Robert, you got one, or you want me to give mine?
I'll go. The more I did the research on it, I actually kind of like Colorado versus against Georgia Tech week 1. 7.5.
Okay.
That's a good enough dog, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm
then
assuming.
oh no,
Did
for
you?
the conference title.
Yeah. Let me do mine first, and then we'll do the conference title.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
You have strong opinions about that, so I'll let you go in a second. I thought you guys are both going to take this, but I'm going to go with Wake over Virginia. I like
that one.
What Dickert's got going there. So, all right, Robert. Sorry for holding you up. Your conference title matchup.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna regret this, but I'm gonna put Miami in there. I'm probably gonna regret it, but I'm gonna go Miami. And I want to put Louisville, but the other one I'm going to put Miami and Louisville, but I want to put Wake Forest. If it's not Louisville, I think Wake Forest is my next.
I like it.
I'd be betting on Miami, Louisville, but I'm going to throw, again, at 75 to 1 to $10 on Wake Forest. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
I'm going to do what you didn't want to do. I'm going to go with Miami and Wake Forest.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. But I think the price is right on that as much as anything. And then, as usual, our guest wraps it up. Who do you have in the conference title game?
Yeah, gosh. I really like that Miami Wake Forest call.
You can do it.
I'm just gonna be chalky according to the odds and go Miami SMU. Nah, I'm gonna join you. I'm going Miami Wake Forest.
There you go. All right.
A Dicker disciple.
There you go.
I love that guy. Yeah, I'll go with you on that one. That 75 to 1 is pretty nice, and Wake Forest gets some nice money for sure.
Yes, I will be doing this podcast next year in a Wake Forest football T-shirt, hopefully. So, Jake, Jesus Christ, I have Jake on the brain. Josh, thank you for joining Robert and I on the Atlantic coast of this fine country of ours. Appreciate it. We will actually see you again when we do our Sunbelt preview. So,
yep.
Robert, thank you as well, and everyone for listening and viewing. We appreciate your loyalty, and we will talk to you soon. Until then, farewell.